The Rinnegan, a dojutsu whispered in legends, feared as the Eye of Destruction, revered as the bringer of peace.
Sasuke Uchiha, the last survivor of his clan, bore this immense power, a swirling vortex of chakra potent enough to reshape reality itself.
Yet, power is a double-edged sword, its weight a heavy burden on the soul. Sasuke knew this truth intimately. He had walked the path of vengeance, tasted the bitter ashes of solitude. Could such a heart, scarred and hardened, find solace in a world brimming with the boundless energy of the sea? From the ashes of tragedy, Sasuke Uchiha rose, a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Will of Fire. A legacy passed down through generations of his clan, pushed him to his limits, and kept him from succumbing to the shadows. The Grand Line knew no such constraints. Here, beneath the vast expanse of the sky, the soul of the sea reigned supreme, embodied in the unyielding spirit of Monkey D. Luffy.
Luffy, who saw the world in vibrant bursts of color, who valued friendship above all else, and whose laughter chased away the darkest storms.
The world of One Piece, a vibrant tapestry woven from the threads of adventure, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds of Nakama, stood in stark contrast to the world Sasuke knew. A world where pirates, driven by their own unique dreams and ambitions, clashed and cooperated in an ever-shifting dance of power.
It was a world where the impossible was merely a challenge waiting to be overcome, where laughter echoed across the waves, and where even the most hardened hearts could find solace in the warmth of true friendship.
Sasuke, haunted by the ghosts of his past, his heart encased in a shell of ice, found himself an outsider in this world of vibrant chaos. He was a shadow in a world bathed in sunlight, his presence a jarring dissonance in the symphony of laughter and adventure. Could he, who had known only loss and the bitter sting of betrayal, ever find a place in this world that celebrated the very things he had been denied? Fate, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. A ripple in the fabric of reality, a tear in the veil that separated two vastly different worlds, brought Sasuke Uchiha face to face with the unbridled chaos of the Grand Line. He emerged from the rift, a solitary figure amidst the swirling vortex of chakra, his Rinnegan blazing with an otherworldly light.
The Straw Hats, caught in the throes of a fierce battle against a formidable foe, paused, their gazes drawn to the newcomer. Luffy, ever the optimist, grinned, his eyes sparkling with curiosity and a thirst for adventure.
But beneath the surface, a tension crackled in the air, the clash of two opposing forces, two destinies on a collision course. The world of ninjas and the world of pirates were about to collide, and the outcome remained shrouded in uncertainty. The transition was jarring. One moment, Sasuke stood amidst the familiar, if desolate ruins of his clan's compound, the weight of his past, a tangible presence around him. The next, he was engulfed in a blinding flash of light, a vortex of swirling chakra pulling him through a tear in the fabric of reality.
What is this place?
His senses reeled, assaulted by the unfamiliar sense of salt spray and sea air, the distant cries of gulls, a jarring contrast to the oppressive silence he'd grown accustomed to. He stumbled as he emerged from the rift, his body protesting the sudden shift in energy. The world around him swam into focus, a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds that assaulted his heightened senses. The air hummed with a strange energy, a chaotic symphony of life that was both exhilarating and disorienting. He was no longer in the world he knew, that much was certain. Sasuke blinked, his eyes adjusting to the sudden shift from darkness to blinding sunlight. He found himself on the deck of a ship, a vessel unlike any he had ever seen. It was a chaotic scene, a flurry of activity as figures darted to and fro, their voices a cacophony of shouts and laughter.
Pirates?
His gaze, sharp and calculating, swept over the scene, taking in the details, assessing the potential threat. They were pirates, he realized, his gaze lingering on the straw hat perched precariously atop the head of the one who seemed to be their leader. They fought with a wild, almost reckless abandon. Their movements a strange mix of raw power and surprising agility. Yet beneath the surface of chaos, Sasuke sensed an undercurrent of something else. A bond of camaraderie, a fierce loyalty that reminded him of his own past, a past he had long tried to bury.
Hey, who's the new guy?
The clash of metal against metal, the thud of bodies colliding, it was a symphony of violence that resonated with a primal part of Sasuke's being. He watched, his expression unreadable, as the straw-hatted pirate, his movements a blur of motion, exchanged blows with an opponent twice his size. Each strike was imbued with an almost tangible force, a testament to a strength that belied the pirate's lean frame.
You want to join in or just stand there all day?
The invitation hung in the air, a challenge that Sasuke couldn't ignore, and maybe, just maybe, a new path to walk. The battle raged on, a whirlwind of fists and feet, but the tide seemed to be turning in favor of the Straw Hats. One by one their opponents fell, until only the captain and his first mate remained standing. The captain, his straw hat slightly askew, his chest heaving with exertion, turned his attention to Sasuke, his eyes widening in surprise.
Whoa, who are you?
There was no immediate threat in his demeanor, just a disarming curiosity that caught Sasuke off guard. He had expected hostility, suspicion, perhaps even fear. Instead, he was met with the wide-eyed gaze of a child encountering something new and fascinating. Sasuke met the captain's gaze, his expression unreadable. He had always been reserved, his emotions carefully guarded behind a mask of indifference. But the Rinnegan, that all-seeing eye, saw beyond the surface, delving into the depths of a person's soul. And what Sasuke saw in the depths of the captain's gaze surprised him.
There was an unwavering determination in those eyes, a fierce loyalty to his crew, a boundless capacity for both joy and sorrow. But there was also a shadow lurking beneath the surface, a hint of pain, a burden that the captain carried with a carefree smile. It was a burden that I recognized, a weight I knew all too well.
The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of the waves lapping against the hull of the ship and the distant cries of gulls. Sasuke, accustomed to the solitude of his own thoughts, found himself strangely reluctant to break the silence. For a moment, he saw a flicker of recognition in the captain's eyes, a shared understanding that transcended words.
They were both outsiders in their own way, bound by destinies that set them apart from the ordinary. They had both known loss, had tasted the bitter sting of betrayal, had walked paths paved with blood and sacrifice. And yet, there was a strength in them, a resilience that refused to be broken.
The tension in the air began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious curiosity. Sasuke, his senses still on high alert, lowered his guard slightly, a testament to the disarming nature of the captain's gaze. He had no intention of staying in this strange new world, but for the moment there was no need for conflict.
You're not with them, are you?
The captain's voice, though still loud, held a note of consideration. Sasuke shook his head, his expression impassive. He had no quarrel with these pirates, not yet anyway. He had a feeling their paths were destined to cross again, but for now, an uneasy truce settled over the deck of the Thousand Sunny. The arrival of Sasuke Uchiha, an outsider with an aura of power that crackled like a live wire, did not go unnoticed for long. The other Straw Hats, their battle won, turned their attention to the newcomer, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Zoro, ever vigilant, rested his hand on the hilt of one of his swords, his eyes narrowed in appraisal. Sanji, never one to shy away from a challenge, struck a pose, a cigarette dangling from his lips.
Luffy, who is this guy? And why does he have that creepy eye thing going on?
Sasuke, his arms crossed, his expression impassive, met their gazes with indifference. He had no interest in these pirates, no desire to explain himself. He was a stranger in a strange land, his only goal to find a way back to his own world.
He's our guest. He's not hurting anyone.
Sasuke snorted, his gaze flicking to the wreckage of the recent battle.
Not for lack of trying.
The air crackled with tension, the unspoken threat hanging heavy between them. Luffy, never one to back down from a challenge, especially not on his own ship, stepped forward, his straw hat casting a shadow over his eyes.
What's that supposed to mean? You think you're stronger than me?
Sasuke's lips curled into a humorless smirk.
Perhaps. Why don't you try me and find out?
The challenge hung in the air, a spark in a powder keg. The other straw hats exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the volatile energy that crackled between their captain and the newcomer. They had seen Luffy's strength firsthand, had witnessed his unwavering determination in the face of overwhelming odds. But there was something about this stranger, something in the depths of his dark eyes, that spoke of a power unlike anything they had encountered before. Luffy, however, was beyond listening. His pride had been challenged, and he wouldn't back down, not from anyone. He might not know who this Sasuke was or where he came from, but he knew one thing. He wouldn't allow anyone to threaten his crew, not on his watch.
All right then, you want to dance? Let's dance.
He launched himself at Sasuke, his movements a blur of motion. His fist, wreathed in Haki, aimed for Sasuke's jaw, but the Uchiha was too fast. He sidestepped the blow with ease, his own hand shooting out to catch Luffy's wrist.
You're strong, but you're reckless. You rely too much on brute force.
Luffy struggled against Sasuke's grip, his face flushed with exertion.
Reckless? That's what they call exciting. Gomu Gomu no pistol!
The air whistled as his fist shot forward, aimed directly at Sasuke's chest. The Uchiha didn't have time to dodge. He met the blow head-on, his body encased in a swirling vortex of chakra. The impact sent Sasuke flying backward, crashing into the mast of the Thousand Sunny. The ship groaned in protest, the mast splintering under the force of the blow. Luffy, his arms still outstretched, stared in disbelief. He had never met anyone who could withstand a direct hit from his gum-gum pistol, not without at least flinching.
The other Straw Hats, thrown off their feet by the force of the clash, scrambled to their feet, their eyes wide with alarm.
The deck of the Thousand Sunny, usually a scene of cheerful chaos, was now littered with debris, the air thick with the smell of ozone and splintered wood.
Luffy!
Chopper cried, rushing to his captain's side, his tiny hooves clattering against the deck.
Are you all right?
Luffy, still stunned by Sasuke's resilience, shook his head, his eyes fixed on the figure slowly rising from the wreckage of the mast. Sasuke, his clothes torn, a thin trickle of blood running down his chin, brushed himself off, his gaze never leaving Luffy.
He had underestimated the pirate captain.
Beneath that carefree exterior lay a strength and determination that rivaled his own.
This fight, he realized, was far from over.
For a moment they stood there, two figures silhouetted against the setting sun, the air thick with anticipation.
Neither of them made a move, but the tension was palpable, a promise of a battle that would shake the very foundations of their worlds.
The air crackled with anticipation, the silence on the deck of the Thousand Sunny broken only by the creak of the ship and the distant cries of gulls.
Sasuke, his body still thrumming from the force of his clash with Luffy, felt a familiar tug at the edges of his awareness.
It was a faint sensation at first, a whisper of chakra that resonated with his own, a beacon cutting through the chaos of this unfamiliar world.
His gaze, sharp as a hawk's, swept across the horizon, searching for the source of the disturbance.
The other Straw Hats, sensing the shift in his demeanor, tensed, their hands hovering near their weapons.
What is it? What's wrong?
Sasuke ignored him, his focus entirely consumed by the faint but unmistakable signature of chakra that grew stronger with each passing second. It was a chakra he knew intimately, a chakra that had been a constant presence in his life, for better or for worse. A chakra that spoke of shared history, of bitter rivalries, and of a bond that even the darkest of paths could not sever.
Naruto, he breathed, the name escaping his lips like a prayer and a curse. He hadn't expected to encounter anyone from his own world in this strange, chaotic realm, least of all his former teammate, his rival, the one person who had always refused to give up on him, no matter how far he strayed from the path. The vortex of chakra intensified, solidifying into two distinct figures that descended towards the deck of the Thousand Sunny. Naruto, his spiky blonde hair catching the sunlight, his blue eyes wide with a mixture of relief and exasperation, landed beside Sasuke, his signature orange jumpsuit slightly askew. Sakura, her pink hair billowing around her, her green eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination, followed close behind.
Sasuke, Sakura said, her voice laced with a mixture of relief and reprimand. What have you gotten yourself into now? She sighed, running a hand through her hair. Honestly, we leave you alone for 5 minutes.
Naruto chuckled, clapping Sasuke on the back hard enough to make the Uchiha stumble. You sure know how to make an entrance, Temmie, he said, his usual grin firmly in place.
The Straw Hats, witnessing the reunion with a mixture of bewilderment and amusement, exchanged confused glances. Luffy, ever the optimist, stepped forward, his hands on his hips.
Hold on a minute, he said, his voice laced with confusion. Who are these guys, and what's with the light show?
Before Sasuke could respond, Sakura stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace.
Please, there's been a misunderstanding, she said, her voice calm and reassuring. We're not here to fight. We're here for Sasuke. She turned to the Uchiha, her expression softening. Sasuke, we need to talk, now.
This doesn't concern you.
Sasuke, however, was in no mood for explanations, especially not in front of these strangers. He had spent a lifetime pushing people away, building walls around his heart, convinced that solitude was the only path to true strength. And now here he was, confronted with the two people who had seen through his defenses time and time again, the two people who refused to let him face his demons alone.
This doesn't concern you.
He turned to leave, but Naruto's hand shot out, gripping his shoulder in a grip that was both firm and surprisingly gentle.
That's not how this works, Temmie. We're a team, remember? And right now your problems are our problems.
The tension on the deck of the Thousand Sunny was palpable, a mixture of confusion, apprehension, and the lingering aftershocks of battle. Sakura, sensing the need to defuse the situation before it escalated further, took a deep breath and turned to the Straw Hats.
I know this is a lot to process, but I promise we'll explain everything. Just please, give us a chance.
Luffy, his curiosity piqued, his innate sense of empathy overriding his initial suspicion, shrugged.
All right, but if you're gonna tell us a story, it better be a good one. Come on, I'm starving. Sanji, meat.
And so, over a surprisingly pleasant meal of Sanji's cooking, an uneasy alliance began to form between the Straw Hats and the unexpected visitors from another world. Sakura, ever the diplomat, explained the circumstances of their arrival, the rift in reality, the shared pursuit of Sasuke, and the strange, chaotic world they had stumbled upon. The Straw Hats, accustomed to the extraordinary, listened with a mixture of fascination and skepticism. They had encountered their fair share of strange and wonderful things on their journey across the Grand Line, but this was something else entirely. Yet, beneath their initial disbelief, there was a growing sense of camaraderie, a shared appreciation for adventure, and a willingness to help those in need, even if those in need came from a world vastly different from their own. The laughter died down, replaced by a sudden unnerving stillness. The air, previously alive with the scent of salt and sea, took on a metallic tang, a primal warning that sent shivers down their spines. The very deck beneath their feet seemed to vibrate, a subtle tremor that quickly escalated into a violent shudder. Glasses clattered, food spilled, and the straw hats, their initial amusement replaced by a wary alertness, instinctively reached for their weapons.
What was that?
An earthquake. This isn't natural. Something's interfering with the magnetic field.
Luffy, his face a mask of concern, gripped the edge of the table, his gaze sweeping across the horizon. Nami, her face pale, shook her head, her eyes fixed on the navigational instruments, which spun wildly, their needles dancing erratically. Sasuke, his senses heightened, his Rinnegan pulsing with an eerie light, felt it too. A surge of energy, ancient and raw, emanating from the depths of the island. It was a presence unlike anything he had encountered before, a primal force that seemed to warp the very fabric of reality around it. Memories of his battles with the tailed beasts flickered through his mind. But this was different. This was older, wilder, untamed by the constraints of chakra or jutsu.
Sasuke, what is it? What do you sense?
Something's coming. Something powerful. This isn't a fight you can win with brute force alone. This is something else entirely.
He met her gaze, his expression grim. He turned his attention to the straw hats, his gaze sweeping over them with a newfound intensity. The straw hats, accustomed to facing down sea monsters and pirate captains, stared in awe and apprehension at the sheer scale of the creature before them. Even Luffy, his usual bravado momentarily forgotten, felt a shiver run down his spine. This was no ordinary foe, no mere obstacle on their path to adventure. This was something ancient, something primal, something that spoke of a power that dwarfed even the combined might of their crew. The ground split open, a gaping chasm spewing forth a torrent of earth and seawater. The air crackled and popped, the very atmosphere seeming to buckle under the weight of the power that was unleashed. And then, slowly, majestically, it emerged, a colossal creature of stone and shadow, its eyes burning with an eerie, malevolent light. Sasuke, his Rinnegan blazing with power, met the Guardian's gaze, a silent challenge passing between them. He could feel the creature's power, its raw, untamed energy washing over him like a tidal wave. This was a fight he could walk away from. Sasuke, I could activate my Rinnegan's space-time ninjutsu, create a portal back to my own world, leave these pirates to their fate. But even as the thought crossed his mind, he knew he couldn't do it. He had spent a lifetime seeking power, honing his skills, pushing himself to the very brink of his limits. And now, faced with a challenge that dwarfed anything he had ever encountered, he couldn't bring himself to turn his back on it. Not when others were in danger. Not when his own pride, his own sense of self-worth was on the line. He had spent years running from his past, from the guilt and the grief that clung to him like a shroud. He had sought solace in solitude, in the cold comfort of his own power. But the straw hats, in their own chaotic, unpredictable way, had reminded him of the bonds he had broken, the friendships he had cast aside in his pursuit of vengeance. Sasuke. I tried to convince myself that I didn't need anyone, that I was stronger alone. But the truth is, the burden of my past is a heavy one to bear, and even the strongest of hearts can only endure so much isolation before it cracks under the strain. The Straw Hats, their initial shock giving way to a familiar determination, turned to him, their expressions a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. Sasuke, this thing, it's unlike anything you've ever faced. But if we combine our strengths, we might stand a chance. Luffy, his initial hesitation forgotten, grinned, his signature straw hat casting a shadow over his eyes. Luffy, all right, let's do it. We'll show this Guardian what happens when you mess with the Straw Hats and their grumpy friend. And so an unlikely alliance was forged, born of necessity and a shared sense of purpose.
The Straw Hats, their individual strengths honed through countless battles and adventures, prepared to face their greatest challenge yet.
And Sasuke, the prodigal ninja, the bearer of the Rinnegan, found himself drawn into a fight not for vengeance, not for power, but for something far more profound. The chance to protect, to atone, and perhaps, just perhaps, to find a measure of redemption in the most unexpected of places.
The battle for the fate of the island, for the very balance of power in this strange and wondrous world, was about to begin. And in the heart of the storm, amidst the clash of steel and chakra, the boundaries between worlds would blur, and the destinies of pirates and ninjas would intertwine in ways none of them could have possibly imagined. The air crackled with anticipation, the very atmosphere thrumming with the immensity of the powers about to collide.
The Guardian, a behemoth of ancient energy, towered over the Thousand Sunny.
The Straw Hats, faces a mixture of determination and apprehension, fanned out, each member instinctively falling into their battle formation.
Sasuke, his Rinnegan blazing, stood at the center of the storm, a beacon of controlled power amidst the chaos. But Sasuke Uchiha did not break.
The battle erupted with a fury that defied description, a symphony of clashing forces that threatened to tear the very island apart.
Luffy, a whirlwind of rubber and willpower, unleashed a barrage of attacks, his gum-gum powers pushed to their absolute limit. Each blow landed with the force of a cannonball, but the Guardian, its body a seemingly impenetrable fortress of stone and shadow, shrugged off the attacks with contemptuous ease.
Zoro, his three swords a blur of motion, weaved a deadly dance around the creature's feet, his strikes aimed at exploiting any weakness, any chink in its seemingly impenetrable armor.
Sanji, his leg engulfed in the fiery passion of Diable Jambe, delivered a series of devastating kicks, each impact leaving a trail of scorching heat against the creature's stony hide.
The weight of words.
Sasuke, his movements a blur of speed and precision, darted through the chaos, his Rinnegan analyzing the Guardian's every move, searching for a weakness, a vulnerability that he could exploit.
He unleashed a volley of shuriken, each one infused with his chakra, but the projectiles bounced harmlessly off the creature's hide, leaving barely a scratch.
He could feel the weight of the Straw Hats' gazes upon him, their hope mingled with a growing desperation.
They had faced down countless foes, overcome impossible odds, but this was different.
This was a force of nature, an embodiment of primal energy that dwarfed anything they had ever encountered.
And in that moment, Sasuke understood the burden of expectation, the weight of responsibility that came with wielding power like his. A moment of clarity.
He had spent a lifetime seeking power, honing his skills, driven by a thirst for vengeance that had consumed him, isolated him from the very people who had cared for him.
But as he stood there, amidst the chaos of battle, a strange sense of clarity washed over him.
This wasn't about vengeance, wasn't about proving his strength.
This was about protecting something precious, about standing alongside others, about sharing the burden of responsibility.
He had dismissed the Straw Hats at first, their carefree nature, their unwavering optimism, a stark contrast to the darkness he had embraced for so long.
But he had seen their strength, their unwavering loyalty to one another, their willingness to risk everything for their dreams, for their friends.
And in that moment he envied them, envied the bonds they shared, the light that seemed to radiate from their very being.
Luffy,
he shouted, his voice cutting through the din of battle.
Luffy, momentarily stunned by a blow from the Guardian, looked up, his straw hat askew, his eyes wide with a mixture of pain and determination.
Distracted, buy me some time.
Luffy, without a moment's hesitation, grinned, his signature straw hat casting a shadow over his eyes.
You got it, Sasuke.
He yelled back, his voice filled with a reckless confidence that made Sasuke's heart clench.
And with that, Luffy, the pirate who embodied the very spirit of freedom and adventure, threw himself back into the fray, his laughter echoing across the battlefield, a beacon of defiance against the encroaching darkness.
And Sasuke, the prodigal ninja, the bearer of the Rinnegan, turned his attention back to the Guardian, his chakra flaring, a promise forged in fire burning in his eyes.
He would not let them down, not now, not ever. The air crackled with energy as Sasuke gathered his chakra, his Rinnegan pulsing with an otherworldly light.
The Straw Hats, their own attacks momentarily faltering, watched in awe and apprehension as a sphere of black fire, a miniature sun, formed in Sasuke's palm.
Amaterasu, the inextinguishable flames, the pinnacle of his clan's fire-release jutsu.
With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed the flames, a torrent of black fire that streaked towards the Guardian, a searing promise of destruction. The creature, its movements sluggish, its senses dulled by Luffy's relentless assault, reacted too slowly. The flames engulfed it, a roaring inferno that consumed its massive form, its cries of pain echoing across the battlefield.
The Straw Hats, their faces lit by the flickering light of the flames, stared in awe and trepidation at the spectacle unfolding before them.
Even Luffy, his usual carefree demeanor momentarily forgotten, watched with a newfound respect as Sasuke, his chakra flaring, stood defiant against the inferno he had unleashed.
The tide of the battle had turned, but Sasuke knew this was far from over.
The Guardian, for all its power, was not defeated, not yet. But for the first time since this chaotic encounter began, a glimmer of hope flickered in the hearts of those who had dared to challenge the ancient power that guarded this island.
They had faced down impossible odds before, had stared death in the face and emerged victorious. And as the smoke cleared, revealing the scorched and battered but still standing figure of the Guardian, they prepared to face whatever fate had in store for them, united in their determination to protect their dreams, their friendships, and the fragile hope that had blossomed amidst the chaos.
The smoke cleared, a haze of ash and steam hanging heavy in the air, the acrid scent of burnt earth mingling with the tang of the sea. The Guardian, scarred and smouldering, swayed precariously. Amaterasu, the inextinguishable flames, had taken their toll. Sasuke, chakra depleted, stood amidst the wreckage. His Rinnegan dimmed, but his gaze unwavering. Power, for all its allure, was a double-edged sword. It could destroy, but also protect and guide. The Straw Hats emerged from the wreckage, their faces etched with awe and relief. Luffy, that was something else, Sasuke. I've never seen anything like it. Sasuke, accustomed to the hushed whispers of respect, the wary gazes of those who both admired and feared his power, found himself caught off guard by the sheer exuberance of the Straw Hats' gratitude. They didn't treat him with reverence, didn't shy away from his intensity. They met his gaze with an openness, an honesty that was both disarming and strangely comforting. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their camaraderie, the echoes of laughter, mingling with the gentle lapping of the waves against the hull of the Thousand Sunny, Sasuke felt the icy grip of his past loosen its hold. The will of fire, a legacy passed down through generations of his clan, a flame that had burned bright with vengeance and then flickered with uncertainty, felt lighter somehow, as if cleansed by the boundless energy of the sea that surrounded him. Chopper, you were amazing, Sasuke. You saved us, Usopp. Yeah, that fire stuff was totally awesome. Sasuke, his lips curving into the faintest hint of a smile, shook his head. He wasn't used to praise, wasn't sure how to respond. He had spent so long shrouded in darkness, his heart encased in ice. He watched them celebrate, their laughter echoing across the water, and in that moment, Sasuke felt a flicker of hope, a longing for bonds. He had entered their world a stranger, a shadow from secrets and shadows, but they had welcomed him, accepted him, flaws and all. They showed him true strength lay in the bonds of friendship. The rift, a swirling vortex of chakra, shimmered into existence, a bridge between worlds beckoning him back to the life he had left behind. Sasuke turned towards it, his gaze lingering on the straw hats, their laughter fading as they watched him go. He had a debt to repay, a promise to fulfill, a path to forge in his own world. Sasuke, Luffy. His voice barely a whisper, but the pirate captain, his senses sharp as ever, heard him. Luffy, yeah? Sasuke hesitated, unsure how to articulate the emotions swirling within him, the gratitude, the respect, the unexpected pang of regret at the thought of leaving this strange, wonderful world behind. Sasuke, thank you. The words felt woefully inadequate, yet carried the weight of his sincerity. Luffy, don't mention it, Sasuke. Just promise you'll come back and visit sometime. We'll throw a feast fit for a